you feeling here? We got about a month to go till primary day.
Feel great. Was endorsed yesterday by Senator Ted Cruz. And Ted represents fighters in Washington. And that's what I am. I'm a proven fighter. I'm going to Washington to take on not just the radical left, not just the Democrats, but also take on these squishy rhino establishment Republicans who say one thing and then do another when they get to Washington. I'm a Marine Corps vet, did a couple tours in Iraq, did my small part, and by doing that, developed not only such a strong love for country, but also a love for my fellow man. And when I look throughout the military, we don't care what color skin people have, what religion people are, where they came from, how much money or little money their mommy and daddy have. We all treat each other as brothers. And frankly, that's how I think it should be here in the civilian world as well. But unfortunately, the woke left and the liberals, they're trying to make everything about skin color and trying to make everything about this transgender craziness, and I'm sick of it. And so, when I've earned the endorsement of people like Ted Cruz, when I've earned the endorsement of people like General Michael Flynn, they say to me, Josh, when you go to Washington, you gotta fight. No more rhinos, no more wimpy Republicans. You gotta go there and be a fighter, and that's what I am.
When you say squishy Republicans, how do you define that?
Yeah, someone like Mitt Romney. Last night Mitt Romney came out and said he was going to support Ketanji Brown for the Supreme Court. It's horrible. Mitt Romney should be eradicated from the Republican Party. He's violating his oath to uphold the Constitution by approving someone like Ketanji Brown. And listen, a lot of the wimpy Republicans, they say that we shouldn't have litmus tests when it comes to the Supreme Court. I disagree with that. We absolutely should have litmus tests. And one of the main litmus tests I will use is whether or not a Supreme Court nominee is dedicated to protecting life. If they refuse to say that they are pro-life, if they refuse to say that they will overturn Roe v. Wade, if they refuse to stand up to protect life from conception to natural death, I will do everything I can to block their nomination. And conversely, if they will stand for life, if they will do everything they can to overturn Roe v. Wade, if they will protect the innocent unborn and protect life from conception to natural death, I'll do everything I can to push them forward. And at the end of the day, there's no issue that's more important than protecting life and stopping abortion. If we're not going to be champions for that issue, then nothing else matters. And in Washington, there's a big difference between champions and friends. A friend is someone who might, at the end of the day, vote the right way, but a champion is someone who will wake up every morning living and breathing and sleeping the issue of stopping abortion, and that's me.
So this primary has been contentious, it's been competitive, there's been a lot of ads back and forth between all the candidates, really. What have you made of the primary thus far as we're coming to the end here?
I think primaries are a healthy thing. It gives the conservative voters and the America First voters an opportunity to look us in the whites of our eyes. And I've been campaigning at churches all over the state. One of the first church town halls we did was right here in Dayton at Washington Heights Baptist Church. And I've spent so much time here in Miami County, in Montgomery County, in Greene County, and all the areas throughout the Miami Valley. And I'm proud to have earned the support of voters at churches all throughout the state of Ohio. Running for the U.S. Senate, a lot of these big brain political advisors, they say, you got to run the campaign through Republican Party groups. That's not what my campaign is. We are not running our campaign through Republican Party groups. Instead, we are running our campaign through churches. And when I first announced that we were going to run the campaign through churches, my opponents were laughing at me, the media was ridiculing me, these political consultants in Washington were laughing behind my back, but none of them are laughing anymore because we're in the lead in this race and we're running the campaign through churches. The mantra of our campaign is pastors over politicians. I've earned the endorsement over 120 pastors and Christian activists throughout the state. And one of the reasons we're going to win this race is because I'm the only candidate who's running on a platform to protect the Judeo-Christian bedrock of America, to protect the Judeo-Christian values that made America strong. And at the end of the day, America was founded on a bedrock of Judeo-Christian values, not Muslim values, not atheism, but Judeo-Christian values. And there's so many factors that differentiate that Judeo-Christian ethic from other belief sets, but one of the main differentiating factors in my mind is our acknowledgement of good versus evil and our willingness to fight for good over evil. And one of the reasons I'm so proud to have earned the endorsement of Senator Ted Cruz is because he's one of those senators in Washington who is not afraid of a fight, and he will take evil on and run to the fire. He will take evil on and combat it, whether that evil is in the Republican Party or in the Democrat Party. And that's going to be me in Washington as well. I will take on the squishy rhino establishment Republicans and party bosses just as quick as I'll take on the radical leftists and Democrats.
With that being said, is there room for some civility on that? Because when you talk about Judeo-Christian values, obviously those are a very big part of the framework of the Constitution, but America, of course, is such a diverse country, and even in the Republican Party, there's Muslims, there's Jewish faith, there's all different types of faith. Are those welcome under what you're talking about when you talk about Judeo-Christian being so dominant?
I would not be here right now were it not for a network of courageous Christians. During World War II, both my grandparents were afraid for their life because of the Nazis. My grandfather, Joe, was from Kelch, Poland. He and his 5 siblings and his mom and dad were pulled out of their home, put on cattle cars, taken to Nazi death camps. My grandfather went one way to be worked, and his mom, dad, and 5 siblings went the other way, and they perished in the gas chambers. At the very same time, my grandma Fernanda, she was an Italian Jew. It was my grandma Fernanda, my Aunt Marietta, my Aunt Renata, and my Uncle Mario. So they were full paisan. They're also Jewish, went back many generations in Italy. And as the Nazis were rising throughout Europe and slaughtering innocent women and children and families in places like Austria and Czechoslovakia and Poland and Germany, word got to northern Italy, to Torino, where my grandmother was from. And there gathered there this network of courageous Christian families. And these courageous Christian families got together and went to the Jewish families and said, we're going to save your kids. My grandmother was taken in, was hidden by an incredibly courageous Christian family. They saved her life, and they raised her as if she was their own. And if you think for a moment about that level of courage, that level of strength to risk the life of your own children to save a complete stranger, I believe that level of courage and strength, it comes from only one place, and it's one's faith. And I never had the opportunity to meet that family that saved my grandmother or thank them, but I think if they walked into the studio today and we could ask them where their strength came from, they would say the Bible, from their faith. And there's so many areas of Scripture we could reference. One I think of is Joshua 1:9, where the Lord commands us, go forward with courage, go forward with strength. Do not be afraid, do not be dismayed, for I will be there with you. And when I was raised here in Ohio, it was hammered into me at a young age that I would not be here were it not for 2 very powerful forces. The U.S. military, liberating Europe, and this network of courageous Christians saving my grandmother. And so much of my public service has been dedicated to paying back those 2 debts. It's why I joined the Marine Corps, did my small part in a couple tours in Iraq, and it's why I've been a real warrior for that Judeo-Christian ethic, for men and women of faith, and for religious liberty and religious freedom throughout our state. And listen, in Washington right now, the whole place is broken. The Democrats and the Republicans, they're equally bad. They go to Washington to do good. They stay in Washington to do well. Do well for themselves, do well for their family members, stuffing money in the pockets of their siblings, of their lobbyist cronies, and it's on both sides. You've watched the Biden family get wealthy under Joe Biden's public service. You've seen the Pelosi family get wealthy with Pelosi in office. But it happens on the Republican side too. Richard Burr, who's a senator from North Carolina right now, is being forced to retire because he was doing insider trading. Same thing with the lady who was a senator from Georgia on the Republican side, doing insider trading. She lost her race. And so we need to do everything we can to bring integrity and honor back into the system. And the way I was raised in my family, the way I was raised in the Marine Corps, loving America, being a gentleman, being a statesman, and also being a fighter is everything.
So for all faiths, they shouldn't be concerned when they hear you talk just about Judeo-Christian, because you're welcoming is what you're getting at from all of what I took from that.
Sure.
Is that, okay. So have you and Mike been able to bury the hatchet, so to speak, not into each other, of course, but have you guys been able to kind of get past that little scuffle? Not scuffle, but you know what I mean.
Listen, there are so many differences between him and me on public policy. And one of the main ones is I was the first statewide official in Ohio to support President Trump, while Mr. Gibbons was supporting John Kasich for president. And while Trump was running on a America First platform, a platform to bring jobs back from China to America. Mike Gibbons was taking jobs and companies from America and sending them to China and then stuffing the profits in his pocket. And there's a lot of stories like that, with Gibbons and a lot of these other guys who they've just made millions, unfortunately, by taking American jobs and shipping them to places like China and India and Russia. And while it's not illegal, it is totally antithetical to the Trump America First movement and the Trump America First agenda. And one of the main fights we have in front of us is a fight against the Chinese Communist Party. Because Xi, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, wakes up every single morning thinking about the downfall of America and the rise of Communist China. And within that, he thinks about how he can take jobs from places like Dayton, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, and pull them into China. As a United States Senator, I will wake up every morning thinking about how I can fight to bring jobs back to Ohio, back to America, to combat the Chinese Communist Party, to stop their manipulation of currency, to stop their intellectual property theft, to stop their stealing of Ohio jobs and American jobs. And the reality is my opponent, while he's not a bad guy personally, he's totally conflicted on this because he made so much of his millions by sending American jobs to China. And so if we're going to take on the Chinese Communist Party, we got to send people to the Senate who've not made their money off of the Chinese Communist Party.
So looking back a few weeks now, we've had a chance to process it. Do you believe he was talking about your military service when he said you didn't have that experience? Or as he said, talking about the private sector experience?
Well, listen, I think the most important thing is to listen to the reaction of veterans and Gold Star parents throughout the state. And veterans throughout the state of Ohio were just outraged by what Mr. Gibbons said, and by him essentially saying that military service is not real work. And there was all these veterans that reached out to our campaign, people from Vietnam, from Korea, from Desert Storm, from Iraq and Afghanistan, who were just outraged, and a bunch of them sent him a letter demanding an apology, and of course he refused that apology. Then General Michael Flynn put out a video. He was outraged. He called me proactively, said, "Josh, I saw what this Gibbons guy said. Am I right to understand that Gibbons was making money off of China while you and I and others were serving overseas?" I said, "That's right, General Flynn." He's like, "I'm going to do a video. This guy's making me really angry." So he does a video. And then there was a Gold Star mother here in Ohio who was so offended by what Mike Gibbons said that she did a video as well. And so, I think the question really is for Mike Gibbons, is he finally going to apologize to veterans and Gold Star families throughout the state and country by telling them that their sons and daughters didn't really work when they were serving in the military?
So it sounds like there were some others that definitely thought that he was referring to the military. Do you believe that, though?
I do. I do. Okay. Unfortunately, it's sad. People like him who've made their millions off of sending American jobs to places like China and India and Mexico, they build an arrogance. And sometimes through that arrogance, they fail to see facts and they fail to understand, how others might view them. And again, I don't think he's a bad guy per se, but I just think he's so arrogant because of all the money he made by taking American jobs and selling them to China and India and Mexico, that he just can't see how he offended veterans and Gold Star families throughout our state and throughout our country.
The new ad that came out about equality, you're on the Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. What was the precipice of that ad, and what were you trying to say in it?
Sure. Well, critical race theory is a virus that needs to be eradicated from our schools. It is teaching kids to be racist. It is separating our kids down racial lines. There's no place for it anywhere in our schools. And I'll give you an example. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. His name is Mike. And Mike and Danielle's daughter, Arabella, is the same age as my daughter, Rosie. They're 8-year-olds. Arabella comes home from school one day. And they say, "Hey, honey, what'd you do at school today?" And she says, "Well, we did affinity groups." And Mike says, "Well, what's an affinity group?" And Arabella goes on to say, "Well, they split us in different groups, the white kids, the black kids, the Hispanic kids, the Asian kids." And then he says, "Well, what'd they do then?" And she says, "Well, they gave us each group a name." And he says, well, honey, what was the name of the group, your group, the white kids? And she says, "Oh, we were called bystanders and oppressors. I mean, this is sick stuff. They're calling 8-year-old girls with bows in their hair oppressors. It's horrible. You know, when I got to Parris Island for Marine Corps boot camp, you stand on these yellow footprints and the drill instructors start yelling at you. And they say tens of thousands of Marines have stood on those footprints where you're standing. And they say, we don't care what color your skin is. We don't care what religion you are. We don't care where you came from. We don't care how much money or little money your mommy and daddy have. You're all equally worthless to us. And what they were saying was, we're going to train you all to be Marines. That was May of 2000. Fast forward 4 years, I found myself in a town called Al-Qaim, which is right where the Euphrates River meets the Iraq-Syria border. Part of the mission of our unit was to stop the flow of foreign weapons and foreign fighters across the Syrian border. I can guarantee you, as we were looking into the whites of the eyes of those Syrian border guards who were just shepherding bad guys across that border, we did not give a hoot whether the guy to the left or the right of us was a black kid from inner city Bronx, a Hispanic kid from rural Texas, a white kid from backwoods Tennessee. It didn't matter. Those were my brothers. I was putting my life in their hands. They were putting their life in my hands. And that was it. We were brothers. We're taking care of each other. That's how it should be here in the civilian world as well. Whether it's in the classroom or in the workplace or anywhere in society, we're all brothers and sisters. It shouldn't matter, like skin color and all this other stuff. And I'm sick and tired of the liberals in this country making everything about race and skin color. And that's why I made this ad, to point out the hypocrisy of the liberals on this issue. And I'm sick and tired of being called a racist. There's no fact-based anything in that. There's nothing racist about being against critical race theory. There's nothing racist about loving America. There's nothing racist about saying, who cares what color skin someone has? Just treat everyone as a brother and sister. That's it. And I think, when I go around the state, I talk to people of all different stripes and backgrounds. I don't care if I'm talking to someone who's Democrat, Republican, independent, libertarian, vegetarian, whatever they are. People are sick and tired of all this racial stuff. It's just being jammed down our throats by the liberal media and by the leftists and by these woke corporations. People are sick of it. They're sick of all the racial stuff. They're sick of all the transgender stuff. We got to put a stop to it and just get back to traditional American values.
So if you do end up getting elected, what are some of the priorities that you want to bring to the for Ohio to the U.S. Senate?
When I get elected to the U.S. Senate, one of my main missions will be to combat the Chinese Communist Party. And instead of them stealing jobs from us, we're going to bring jobs from all over the world back to Ohio, back to America. We're going to bring manufacturing jobs and production and distribution jobs to places like Dayton and Toledo and Columbus and Cincinnati. On top of that, we're going to produce as much energy, as much oil and gas here in Ohio, here in America. People don't realize this, but if you took the state of Ohio, the state of Pennsylvania, and the state of West Virginia, under President Trump, those 3 states combined into a region were the 3rd largest producer of natural gas in the entire world. Literally, we're sitting on a gold mine of natural gas in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And these Looney Tune liberals like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Elizabeth Warren, they're trying to keep these natural resources in the ground. I mean, here's the choice. We've got hundreds of thousands of Ohio jobs and American jobs buried in the ground. We can either bring those jobs out of the ground, or we can keep them in the ground, which is what China and Russia and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela wants. What we need to do in a way that protects the air we breathe and the water we drink and the environment for our kids and grandkids is drill for all the oil and gas we can in this country for multiple reasons. First, we got to bring down the cost of filling up the gas tank at the pump. It's getting out of control. For working families, for senior citizens, it's getting out of control. Second, for the economic strength of this country, if we can bring down the cost of powering a factory, you can hire more workers. If we can bring down the cost of heating our home in the winter, people can afford more goods. They can afford more life. Third, national security. Rather than depending on radical Islamic regimes in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia or Iran, or other radical regimes like Russia or Venezuela, what if we depended on places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas? The natural resources we have in this country, man, these are assets. These are blessings. God gave us these blessings Let's maximize them for the economic strength and national security and jobs for the American people. Another issue I'm so passionate about is protecting life. I will do everything I can to shepherd through pro-life justices and judges throughout the federal judiciary so we could ultimately and as quickly as possible overturn Roe v. Wade. Another thing I'm very passionate about is standing up for our Second Amendment rights. Our gun rights, our right to bear arms come from God, and it's the Second Amendment to the Constitution that helps us protect every other aspect of that Constitution and every other right in that Constitution.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add, Josh? I'm taking a lot of your time here, so. All right, so finally, Josh, let's talk about the border. The border's been an issue that all candidates have been talking about. There's much debate about how to approach it. What's your approach?
First of all, we have to finish President Trump's wall. Walls work. I've been down on the border. I've been on the Rio Grande. I've talked face-to-face and toured with the Border Patrol agents down there. Second, we need more Border Patrol agents. They need to be armed, they need to be trained, and we need more of them. Third, they need modern cutting-edge technology. The best way to have a force multiplier of Border Patrol agents is to have technology they can use that will help secure the border and track down a lot of the criminals you're trying to come across. And I say criminals because that's what they are. You know, the left likes to call them undocumented. They're not undocumented. These are felons. These are spies from China. These are terrorists from Yemen. These are gangbangers from Mexico who are coming across our border to do bad things in America. And listen, we have a process in this country. And one of the reasons why I've spoken to so many Mexican Americans who are outraged with illegal immigration is because there's so many Mexican Americans here who came the right way and they waited in line for 7, 8, 10 years. The green card process, went through the whole process. They did it the right way. And now they look at these line jumpers from Mexico, from China, from Yemen, from other countries, and they're like, wait a second, this isn't right. We came to America. America's a place based on the rule of law. And if you look at a lot of these border towns on the Texas-Mexico border, they voted for Trump. And the reason they voted for Trump because they're sick and tired of all these illegal immigrants coming across. And I think illegal immigrants, it's criminal aliens, they should be deported. And one of the things that really gets under my skin as a Marine Corps vet, the fact that we have over 40,000 veterans living under bridges and on the streets, while Joe Biden is using our tax money to put illegal immigrants in hotels. We should not be spending a penny on illegal immigrants. They should be deported, and any of that money that's left over should be serving our veterans who are living on the streets, getting them off the streets, getting them out from under bridges, and getting them into homes and jobs.
Perfect. Okay.
Thanks, man.
Hey, appreciate it, Josh.
So good to
Nice
see you.